Hello dear viewer, House Gryffindor like a real hero, Murdoch X here, and today we're going to talk about my PlayStation 2 collection update for the month of August 2019. There are two stacks. This is the stack of games that I'm adding, and this is the stack of games that I haven't got to. I don't actually add a game to my collection until I've played it, so these ones, while I do own them, I don't count them yet. Now that all of that information is inside your brain, let's get to the games. Let's start off with the worst game in the stack, which is the Powerpuff Girls Relish Rampage. Now, I'm a fan of the Powerpuff Girls, so I'm sad to see this franchise treated this way, but I should have seen it coming. This is a game based on a Cartoon Network series. They tend to be bad ones, although this game is worse than most. In this game, you play as all three girls lazily clumped together, flying around doing dumb fetch quests. Good voice work though. Next up is a spooky game, Fatal Frame 2. I don't like horror games most of the time. They tend to rely on suspense when I'd rather be moving fast and having fun. This series though is the exception to that rule. Your goal in this game is to capture ghosts with a camera as the story unfolds around you. This has a good balance of gameplay and story, though like any adventure game it can be hard to know what to do next sometimes. Also, it's one of those fixed camera games. It makes finding hidden objects a little bit of a pain, but then I suppose that's the goal. This feature didn't bother me too much, but like most horror games from this era, it is dark, which can be a pain on modern flat televisions. Not quite as scary. Up next we have the Simpsons Game. I thought this was going to be a bad game, but while it's not a great title, it's fun enough. Like other PS2 games, it has a multiplayer feature that feels like it was added at the last minute. I suggest skipping this feature as player 2's duty consists mostly of standing on buttons so that player 1 can get to something. This is a standard platforming title and it has real writing and voices to go with it, but there are major camera issues. Much like the Futurama game, this feels like a lost episode of the show that could be great if the gaming part were just a little bit better. Don't get me wrong, it is worth playing. Next up we have PaRappa The Rapper 2. His voice is different and he doesn't sound like he has to believe, and the songs aren't as good, but I'm still glad to have this game. I loved the first one so much. Besides being fun and charming, the original also taught me where the buttons were with a vengeance. If you're not familiar with PaRappa The Rapper, it's a music game where you hit buttons to the beat. You do have a little bit of freedom, but it's never clear how much freedom. Sometimes freestyling works and other times it doesn't. It's hard to tell why though. Quick story, I once met a girl dressed up as PaRappa at a convention. I freaked out. When I saw her next to me, I just shouted, "PaRappa!" She looked up at me and waved, and I just blushed and ran away. My wife told me to go and get a picture with her, but I was too afraid. I got celebrity nervous over PaRappa cosplay. What does that say about me? Next up is Digital Hitz Factory. I hate the controls and I didn't even try. I'll say some things so that there's a little bit of footage to show though. I love the new DuckTales show. If you're not watching it, you should. It's hilarious and full of lore. Okay, that's enough footage. Next game! Which happens to be Defender. I thought this was a retro arcade game and it turns out I was sort of right. This is a modernized version of the 1981 arcade cabinet. It's not bad. Shoot ships, rescue people, fly through portals. Good stuff, and now in 3D. There's nothing new here, but what it does well. Got a new kids game this month, Go Diego Go Great Dinosaur Rescue. I have played the Dora game before and this is an identical game. The graphics have been swapped around, but it really is just a lazy rerun of the other title. Having said that, it's not a bad game for children. It's repetitive and slow, but for a young person, that's not a bad thing. Next up we have EOE, Eve of Extinction. I don't know what I was expecting when I put this game into my console, but it wasn't this. I thought this would be some sort of RPG. It's not, and that's fine, but I do wonder where that comes from. I think it's the name. Does this sound like an RPG title to you? What EOE is, it turns out, is an action brawler style of game where you have a couple of different beam weapons and your fists. You run around and beat up everyone and everything to rescue your girlfriend. I think. I don't know, I super forgot this game after a few days and had to come back to watch the video to remind myself what it was. It's not a bad game, but it is forgettable. Maybe I was expecting too much out of this one. Second to last game is the XFiles. I have another YouTube channel where I post raw gameplay footage, and this one got loads of hits for violations, mostly music, but the intro to the show is in the game, which got my upload tagged. So, this title is a fun adventure style of game that we saw a lot of during this era. In the first stage, you play as Fox Mulder exploring a town with aliens or zombies or something. There's a whole story that goes to it, and your job is to explore the stage, find clues, and shoot some mythical creatures. This is better than I thought it would be. And as always, I saved my favorite game for last, which this time around is Soul Nomad and the World Eaters. I've been looking for this game for a long time, and I ran into it at a Game Over Video Games in Houston, Texas. This is a strategy role-playing game, but with a twist. Rather than navigating battle maps with single characters, you set up little groups of them and choose different layouts so that you can strategically place the units within their group. I'm not a fan of that aspect of the game, but it's not bad, and if I'd had this game back when it was new, I'm sure I would have played it to completion. Unfortunately, as an adult playing this game in 2019, I can say that this title has some poor translation choices that are offensive. It's a good game, and the voice talent here is fantastic, but I was expecting more, and this ended up just being kind of a bummer. I may come back to this and just skip the plot elements, but then again, I still need to play the Dark Cloud games, and those are way higher on the list. But despite all of these minor letdowns, I am ecstatic to add 10 new games to my collection, which brings my total up to 678 out of 1,795 for a total of 37.7% of a complete North American collection. Okay, so let's see. If I want to get to the 40% mark, that's another 40 games that I have to play. This is a tough hobby sometimes. It can be intimidating to get through all of these games, but I'm gonna get there. You'll see. Subscribe.